Today, I want to talk about Nick Fuentes and the America First movement. And the reason why is in the past week, Nick Fuentes has basically come out and stated that MAGA is dead and that America First is going to be replacing it. And at a certain level, I do agree with his assertions. As I have regularly covered, I think Donald Trump has done himself and his movement no favors since getting into office, basically going against every single thing that he stood for or that he claimed he was going to do during his presidential run, at least all the things that I think independents and people who have any modicum of common sense would have voted for him for and were most important to them. And then on top of that, I also just want to discuss him because he's been getting insanely popular. And I kind of want to give my opinion on some of the reasons why and what I have seen out of him since I started paying attention to him, which was quite frankly right after the Charlie Kirk assassination. And so I want to take a look at a video Breaking Points did, kind of talking about him. I think it's interesting because I believe it is always instructive to see how other political commentators may take a look at figures like Nick Fuentes, who, again, I think he has been getting extremely popular, but wanted to get their takes on it, seeing as it's right and left to see, okay, does this resonate? Do my opinions as someone in the center resonate with their viewpoints, or am I completely off in a different direction from them? But I'll get into the video and then provide some of my feedback on top of that.
Epstein obviously dovetails to a much broader sort of breakdown going on within MAGA, centered around Nick Fuentes, who is an overt racist and neo-Nazi. And
just right off the bat, I've heard Crystal talk about him multiple times, and she always goes immediately to that. And so there's a few things about that. Number one, how old is he, right? I think he's like 26 or something now. And I think for the funniest thing to me about Crystal is that she is a Democrat. They're supposed to believe in grace and allowing people forgiveness and all this kind of stuff. But then they always seem to me to be the party that is like the most attacking, the least forgiving, and they just want to brand you as one thing forever. The thing that I think is most important to keep in mind about Nick Fuentes is exactly the point that I just made, that he's 26 years old. Your brain does not fully develop until you're 26 years old. So to come out against someone and just constantly call him this, and I'm curious how much of his content she has watched recently. Yes, I can fully get on board that in the past, he has made insane claims. There are still things that I think he clings on to that are racist. But to go as far as she calls him, like, he could have been doing it as a persona to kind of carve out a niche as a shocking personality to get on different shows and to gain traction in the space, right? Because how do you differentiate yourself when there's so many voices? And so that may have been a persona that he had crafted. I think some of it is, yes, this is what he believes, but he took it to the most extreme state. I think that's entirely possible. And then again, once again, I think as someone who, I didn't go quite as far as he did, but back in the days of MySpace, if any of you actually can recall that, they had, a blog section, and I would write incredibly shocking things. And it was, okay, here's, the most insane way to look at it, and I'm going to write about it as this. But if you were to talk to me and I were to reason it out and say, okay, here's what I think and here's the reasons why, you're going to get a much different conversation from me about that than if you read what I actually wrote. And it was kind of like a, slam blogging kind of a thing. And so, and that, again, that was while I was, I guess, a little bit younger, right, in college. the beginning of college, the first couple of years, but it's the same thing where your personality and, how measured you are and all that stuff evolves over time. How much attention you feel you crave, right? That's a huge driving factor too. How can I get the most eyes on what I'm saying? These are all things that, again, I just think of because I put myself, if I were in his shoes. And the other reason why I think about it that way is because if you have listened to anything that has happened or any of the shows that he has been on or any of his long form stuff that he has put out since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which again, admittedly, that's when I started listening to him, I don't think his views are that extreme. And a big component of why I think he's popular is do you think that he believes what he's saying, and although you may not agree with his conclusions, do you think he's trying to move in the direction of doing what is best for the average person in America? I think I would say yes to both of those. So again, I just don't like how she immediately, anytime she even invokes his name, she goes off on a tangent about how he's a neo-Nazi and a racist, and it's like, have you watched any of his stuff recently? Maybe you should if you're going to be criticizing him in such an aggressive manner. Again, yes, he has said insane things in the past. I have seen clips. And that's the other thing too is, did you watch his clips or did you watch, because you can create, I do my own clips on this channel, and even when I watch some of my clips, I'm like, ugh, like, that doesn't sound great, but unfortunately, clips can only be so long and only do so well with, certain time lengths. And it's like, well, I just have to put that content out there regardless of if it's lacking nuance and context. And so, again, what are you consuming from the person? Are you actually watching their entire thoughts on a subject, or did you see a clip and now you're trying to jump down his throat because of a persona that he had crafted before that he no longer personifies?
Is another element and factor here that is splitting the Republicans apart at this moment. And he had some pretty interesting comments recently about how he believes that MAGA is dead, and also pointing out some of the hypocrisy of the right and of other MAGA influencers, where they want to draw the line at him, but they are perfectly okay with hateful racist rhetoric when it comes to other groups, ethnicities, religions, etc. Let's take a listen to C2.
After this year, 2025 is the year that MAGA died. This is the year that this hat is no longer controversial. The hat is not edgy. The hat is not provocative. It doesn't even mean anything. This hat is dead. This hat is dead. Now, metaphorically speaking, and this is the future. And let's look at the ledger. On the side of MAGA, you have Lindsey Graham.
And just a quick commentary on that statement. I 100% agree with that. And again, that was, I think, anyone who is in MAGA who I perceived as being genuine and actually, once again, whether you agree with their methods or not, are trying to do things that are good for the broadest base of Americans. And that I think should be who you support. Is, do you see them as genuine, and do you see them advocating for the average American? Those are the people who should be supported. And all of those people, I feel like, have pulled themselves away from MAGA. And although they may not be uniformed, really, aligned behind America First, I think they are moving in that direction of, once again, pulling themselves back from MAGA. And that's what's killing it. Now, I think the statement of America First is going to be the path forward. I don't know that that's what it's actually going to be called. I don't know if they're going to actually all come together and form some sort of pseudo alliance or whatever that looks like. But when you're thinking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, when you're thinking about Tucker Carlson, when you're thinking about Nick Fuentes, even when you're thinking about all these people who, and even Charlie Kirk, I think there's some evidence that before he was assassinated, he was also pulling back. and is basically kind of distancing himself from MAGA, because MAGA has been doing everything, as I said in the intro, everything the opposite of what we want. We don't want wars. We don't want to be influenced by Israel. We don't want, the prices to continue to go up. We don't really care about the stock market. We want people to have jobs. We want people to be feeling that they can actually obtain the American dream, and that's not what's going on here at all. And so, yes, that is what is killing MAGA. And because Trump refuses to actually address any of those issues, he's just shooting himself in the own foot and killing his own movement. Because people are saying you're not actually representing. And when he comes out and says things like, whatever I want is MAGA, you can't tell me what's MAGA. It's like, no, I think there's an implied promise that make America great again is not make Trump great again. We didn't sign up for make Trump great again. People signed up for make America great again. And that promise is not being fulfilled, in my opinion.
Ben Shapiro, Marco Rubio, Randy Fine, Mark Levin. Apparently all of that is MAGA. Together they support war with Iran, Chinese students, H-1B visas, 300,000 deportations all year. And then on the other side, apparently what is...
And exactly as he's calling out, just some of my own commentary, yeah, all the most despicable people. Like, any of the people who every time I hear them talk, I'm like, oh, let's hear what the dumbest take possible is. And it's not to say that they have the dumbest take on everything, right? I think they got very popular for a reason at a certain point in time. But when you're looking at, especially it seems to be coalescing around basically neocon beliefs, right? Or support for foreign countries. A lot of those people, it's Israel first, not America first. And it is, oh yeah, let's continue sending. We got to get all those minerals. Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz or all these people who have literally made it their statement and their goal in being prominent people is to push aside Americans and pursue what is best for anything other than Americans. Basically the people who the military industrial complex and or Israel. And so I think everyone is completely fed up with that. I mean, back in the days where you controlled the traditional media, you could just lie to us. But now there's all these other figures. They have their own platforms which dwarf traditional media, and you can't lie to us anymore. So when you're seeing these people come out and they're basically advocating for the worst thing for the average American in going abroad and continuing to fund the military industrial complex, devalue our money, and basically make everyone's lives worse, well then, yeah, of course, we're going to revolt against you.
Apparently what is not MAGA, what is kicked out of MAGA, wacky, crazy haters, Republican haters, Democrats, third worldists. You got Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, Alex Jones. You got all these people on the other side in favor of America first, mass deportations, no foreign students, no foreign workers, no war with Iran, no war with Russia in Ukraine. What has become of the movement? It's been inverted, and it is.
That's the thing, is that such a diverse cast of characters. It's hard to see them all being able to align. I mean, I get it, right? There is a certain through line, right? Like he said, where he listed off a couple things there. Basically, no more war. So yes, there is a through line there, but it's a very loose pairing. Like you basically have Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist, which a lot of conspiracy theories have been proven true, but he's like full tinfoil hat. You have Nick Fuentes, who essentially was a shock commentator until Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I think he has kind of chilled out and become more moderate. Thomas Massey, who I think has always been pretty on the right side of how do we actually help Americans, but has, he's more, I think he's pretty common sense, and he's a little bit more measured, and I think his main focus from what I've heard him talk about is like, hey, the budget is really out of whack and we need to get that under control. So I feel like that's really, yes, it dovetails through with, okay, we need to get spending and stop forever wars. We need to get that under control. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has kind of fallen off the MAGA wagon, kind of on the back of Jeffrey Epstein, which once again ties in through the Mossad and Israel. So yes, okay. Again, I do see a through line, but a lot of it is very lightly drawn or a dotted line for all of them to follow. And I'm just curious to see how long that coalition, or if it even could, be brought to all full alignment, and then could it withstand any sort of time frame? It's just hard for me to imagine, unfortunately.
Is now dead this coming Monday. And I said, fuck Islam. I said, these Muslims need to go home. Fuck them. They're barbarians. They're third worldists. They like to live in open sewage and bomb crap. You think any conservative would disavow me? Any of them? Any Republican? You think if I was known for saying that, do you think I would have any trouble getting into CPAC or the New York Young Republican Club Gala or the GOP? Of course not, because Laura Loomer has access to the White House and she says stuff like that. Ben Shapiro has access to Trump and he says stuff like that.
And that is a very good point, because that's 100% exactly right. All you have to look at is, okay, if we are talking about any other country, are there anti-free speech laws on the books for any of those other countries? Absolutely not. And so that's literally as far as you need to go. Just ask that question. What other country are you not allowed to criticize? We can even criticize our own country, and no problem. But if you criticize Israel at all, you get kicked off of every social media platform, like Nick Fuentes, if you get big enough. Or if you're a teacher, you can be fired if you criticize Israel. If you're a company, they're trying to put in laws where you can't boycott Israeli companies. There's all these things where there's literally special carve-outs for Israel and only Israel. And so it's just, it becomes so apparent, and that's the thing that constantly is radicalizing people against Israel. If you criticize Israel at all, you get attacked as an anti-Semite for even the most tepid criticization of them. And so when you're seeing that, and you go that, and you listen to it, right? You hear what they say. You hear what Tucker has said recently. He even dares to talk to Nick Fuentes, and they swarm and attack him and call him an anti-Semite and say he should be canceled and he should be kicked off YouTube. When you see that and you go, for what? And there's no real explanation, that's going to radicalize people further against the cause that you're on the side of. In this case, Israel, which is disappointing, because there should be a positive working relationship with all countries, ideally. But the more you try and censor the free speech of America, the more people are going to be radicalized against you, just point blank. And he has a very good point in bringing up, if he said this about any other country, no one would care. And that's why people are flocking to him and other people who are willing to offer up some sort of criticism for Israel, is because that's the taboo thing to do. And it shouldn't be. Why should it be? Why can you criticize any other country except for them? Just a question. You come to your own conclusion on that one.
He's got a point, doesn't he,
No, he's
Sauger?
right.
And
Yeah, he's right.
Listen, I want people to be totally clear, because Nick Fuentes is trying to whitewash his image right now and is being sanitized with the help of any number of podcast hosts, but Tucker Carlson being one of them. This is a man who says...
And I don't know if once again, going back to my original argument against her, have you listened to any of his stuff recently? Yes, okay, he has even recently said things like he loves Hitler, he loves Stalin, he thinks the Holocaust happened, but it was overinflated, right? I've listened to his, sit downs with Dave Smith, with Tucker Carlson, with Glenn Greenwald. So I have heard it. He still holds some of these things to be, these are things that he actually believes. But once again, it's not whitewashing. It's allowing him to come on and talk. And he doesn't seem that extremist. Like, things that he has said in the past and clips that are out there, awful. But there may have been something that happened when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, just like Breaking Points did, just like any number of political commentators where they go, oh shoot, I could be next. Maybe I should chill out my rhetoric a little bit. Maybe I should more say what I actually think and not this crafted persona where I'm trying to be intentionally shocking to gain as much traction as possible, because then that's going to bring the radicals to come at me. And then I can end up in the same way. Or I could become politically inconvenient. Whatever your belief is that happened with Charlie Kirk, just anywhere on the spectrum, acting in a certain way is more likely to have something copycatted on you the same way. So maybe that was a realization of, hey, I need to chill out my rhetoric. And yes, these can be things that I still believe. But again, I have listened to multiple long-form podcasts with him, and he did not get combative in any sort of way towards these people who have had him on their shows. And so in that regard, I don't think it's whitewashing. It's allowing him a platform. They did ask him the questions of, okay, why did you say these things? Why do you think these things? Do you still believe these things? So they're bringing it up, and that, again, I think I have watched, and I hadn't really watched anything, again, before the assassination, but I have watched some of his own content as well, and a lot of it seems fairly measured now, whereas it was not before. And whatever you want to attribute that to, again, I think she just needs to actually go listen to his stuff, and I would say his own personal content that is by himself as he rants, and then make an opinion based on that, because that's what I think your truest measure is. If you haven't checked in with someone in a long time, you can't criticize them because you don't really know what's going on with them.
He thinks Hitler is cool and denies the Holocaust and is an avowed racist, hates Jews, but all sorts of other ethnic groups as well. But he's completely correct there at the end.
And that's why I can't take her criticisms that seriously. Yes, she did mention a few of the things that I did, right? But he doesn't hate all the other races. I think he's saying Israel's influence on the United States is bad and we need to get it out. He does say it's better if there's no interracial breeding and marriage and that kind of stuff, which I'm like, yeah, that I do not agree with. That is insane to say. But he doesn't hate them. Like, he's even said, I don't hate any of these people. Like, he worked on Kanye's campaign. So if he hated Kanye, if he hated black people or, whatever, like she's trying to say, why would he be supporting him and working on his campaign? Aside from, oh yeah, this is going to get me some clout and hopefully it'll blow me up some. Like, yes, okay, that is something that could be a consideration for him. But if he truly hated them in the way that she's trying to frame it, I don't think he would be working on his campaign. Just point blank. And that's the thing, is there's a nuance, I think, in some of his beliefs, and it's just a misrepresentation the way that she is presenting it. Although some of them are dead on. Like I said, he definitely loves Hitler. He definitely thinks that the Holocaust is overstated. Not that he doesn't believe it. That is also incorrect. But he thinks it's overstated. He directly said that, I think, on Dave Smith's podcast. I'm in the camp of thinking that she is misrepresenting some of the things that he said, and I think if she wants to give her opinion, keep in mind that he is still young. Again, if he's 26, his brain finally has solidified. The chemistry is where it needs to be, and who he is now may not be who he was 5 or 10 years ago.
He says, you know what? If I said all the things that I say, if I said the things that Randy Fine says and Lori Loomer says about how Muslims are disgusting and they're savages and they all need to be deported and it's a horror show, it would be no problem. So you are not going to be able to draw the line. Like if all that hateful shit is fine for all these other groups, you're not going to be able to draw the line when it comes to Jewish people. And he's 100% correct about that. You know, I also think, like, I'm curious too, your view though on his assertion that effectively MAGA is dead. I think that in a sense he's correct about that. And the fact that they have completely compromised any sort of moral credibility they could possibly have in order to gatekeep a character who's an overt like neo-Nazi like Nick Fuentes. I mean, these people support a genocide. They're, they are implementing a refugee policy that is whites only. They're doing mass racial profiling of Latinos, including Latino American citizens across the country. They're sending people to CCOT. And you think you're going to have any sort of moral standing to then be like, no, here's where we draw the line? It's ridiculous.
I think that on the Israel issue is where it's the cleanest headshot. And this is also why this entire conversation about it's like, oh, they must disavow. It's like, guys, nobody more embodies no enemies to the right more than the Zionist right. You can say literally anything about dual loyalty for Muslims, about wanting Palestinian children to starve in Gaza, about wanting and having joy, which here's the thing, they say all this shit. They're like, I get joy when I see Palestinian children, being killed in Gaza. One of the people who has been openly going after the Heritage Foundation has been increasingly making fun of Palestinian women and children who are in tents in Gaza, who are being flooded by more recent rains, which obviously is a mass spreader of disease. So you want the moral authority to tone police what is or isn't. I mean, it's like, again, I can't possibly be lectured by the likes of Randy Fine, who said he wants to nuke Gaza. It's like, dude, you are...
And that's the thing with all these people that I think is the most outraging to people, whether they can peg that that's what it is or not, is just the hypocrisy. Like, when you are trying to say, oh yeah, you can't be critical of this group, or, I mean, even if you're talking to like an extremist, right, that's cheering on anything bad that would have happened or whatever, but then you are, on the other hand, cheering on bad things happening to Palestinians, exactly in this example where, oh yeah, there's women and children in tents that are getting flooded out, and you're excited by this prospect, or you're saying, oh yeah, we should flatten them all, and like, you are not a good person. And so you trying to moralize around Israel while you are cheering death and destruction to a separate set of people and the genocide of, and you're signing bombs as Josh Shapiro and many others did, or you're doing any of these actions that are literally saying, I'm 100% pro Israel going in and committing a genocide in Gaza, and then you try and have any sort of outcry against anyone, that's where you lose all moral high ground. That's where you lose anyone taking anything that you say seriously.
Literally openly celebratory of deaths of women and children, and the same standard that you want applied to rhetoric against Jews is ones that you directly use against Muslims, not even really just Muslims, because it's really just anybody who you disagree with, period. They most openly, go after Muslims. So and by the way, then also, they talk about damage and about how...
And that's the other thing too that's actually really funny, is because that action is exactly what I think repelled people from woke. Is that, okay, you are going to say, oh yeah, we need tolerance and we need, we need to lift up people who are disenfranchised, and we need to have compassion, and we need to have forgiveness, and we need to help out underprivileged people, but then you're willing to attack white men, essentially, is what it came down to for the woke movement. We can disenfranchise white men, and we don't care about them and forget their struggles, and we're not even gonna, they're basically put on an island, and we're gonna disadvantage them with policies, and I mean, literally outright, that's what they said. And so when you are doing that, well then why do any of us, white men, speaking as a white man, why do we want to go along with any of your policies? Because you're not showing empathy. You're not saying for everyone, because there is a different message of between oh, we need to lift everyone up and provide opportunities. And that's the kind of thing that I try and advocate for. And that's the thing that I believe in, is because it needs to be just, hey, meritocracy, colorblind, however you need to go about doing that, that's the way that we need to move. But instead, no, that's not what's going on at all. And the same thing over here, where it's, oh yeah, we need to advocate on the side of Israel, but then it's literally the same tactics that woke people used, where we're advantaging this one class over all the others, and then we say screw you because you're not. Again, it's not ideologically consistent. And that's what my biggest problem is, because you seem like a hypocrite and you're literally using the same tactics that this other group that have been despised for the past 4 years, what they were doing. And you're literally mirroring that. And the funniest thing about that is that then they have the audacity to try and tag people like Tucker Carlson as the woke right, which once again is hilarious to me, because you are the ones actually mirroring that type of woke activity.
Hurtful and hateful rhetoric and all that is, who has the most power? Who has the most power? The people who have openly cheered on the deaths of women and of children, of funding, much of what is going on there, of directing U.S. policy. So it's very obvious that, if you look at actually who's been the most harmed by hurtful rhetoric, it's you. Like, you're the biggest people for mass murder. And yeah, I mean, look, on the MAGA being dead point, we have counted out Trump before, and that's why I don't. I mean, look, after January 6th, you could have made a good case that people were going to move on. It didn't work, right? He won, and not only just won the nomination, he won the election by popular vote, right? So I'm not ready to just sit here and discount their own political talent, because they've pulled many, many rabbits out of a hat before. Now,
and what I'll say about that is I think it is, because number one, I think there are more and more growing voices that are unhappy with the things that are not being done, I think in most cases, or being done in that we are shipping aid to Israel to commit a genocide, or we are shipping aid to the Ukraine to fight Russia. These are things that no one is interested in. But yeah, most of it is things that are not being done. People are not being helped. The economy is not getting better because Trump refuses to actually address the symptoms, and he's just trying to put Band-Aids on the problems, and it's doing nothing. But the thing that I think is the most important about this, and I think there's two things. Number one, Trump is not on the ballot again. He can't become president again. Like, yeah, okay, they flirt with it, and no, that's not going to happen. So that is number one. So he can't, like, this time Biden was so bad that yes, he came and here's the things I promise you. So number one, he can't be on the ballot again. Number two, now you are watching in real time him break almost every single promise that he made on the campaign trail. So there's actually three things. That one's number two, is you're watching in real time him break all the promises. So you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And you could have looked at the first time he was in office and said, okay, maybe he was just thwarted by the system. The second time, he knows what he can do to circumvent those problems that he had, and he's going to do right by us. But now you're watching him not do any of that. And so when you're witnessing that, and you said, well, I had the justification to think that you were going to, and now you're doing literally the reverse. It's literally like your entire presidency this time around is up for sale to the highest bidder, and you just let people go off and do whatever they want. Well, then the average American is going to get pissed off with that, and they're going to say, screw you, I'm done with you. And then number three is, and I said it in my breakdown of, okay, here are the candidates, and what do I think is going to happen, and where are we at, and here are the positives and negatives of both of them. The biggest issue that I think is starting to expose itself, and you're seeing people start to make fun of it, is same thing they're making fun of with Biden. The right was making fun of with Biden, where he's falling asleep in things, and he's showing his age. Just look at, I think the most recent one that happened was there was a reporter or a journalist who was asking him a question, And normally he comes back with some snappy quip or, a nickname or whatever, or even with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But with the journalist first, I'll address that, is he just is like, you're a bad person. You're an evil person. That's an awful question, and blah, blah, blah. And he just admonishes her in front of everyone. He doesn't come up with any sort of zippy response or, zinger or anything like that, like he would normally do, especially in his first term. And same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Brown was the nickname that he had come up with for her. And then the reason you knew it was an awful nickname is because then he had to provide an explainer on the backside to say, oh yeah, because it was like green goes to brown when it goes rotten or something like that. It was just the dumbest thing possible. And so you're losing your sharpness because you're old. It's not a knock on, I mean it is, but it's not a knock specifically at him, but it's a knock on all old people. When you're old, your brain doesn't work as well as it used to. And you're watching that in real time happen. Because, once again, go back and watch anything from his first term, and that was one of my concerns. One of my main concerns about Trump is that he's getting older, and even in the debates, you saw he was not quite as sharp. And so as this is going on over these 4 years, that's just going to continue to be more and more true. The same thing with Biden. One day it just falls off a cliff. And I feel like we're starting to roll down that hill real quick. And so, yes, that's why I think those 3 reasons are why I think MAGA is dead. Because I think it's going to become more and more evident until it gets to the Biden point where everyone just watches and goes, oh my God, what did we just witness? And that will happen by the end of this. We're only 1 year in. That'll happen by the end of these 4 years.
Now, whenever it does come to the Israel issue, and specifically with the current fight that is happening right now, this is something where you cannot both sides it. And I think that perhaps is where he is most correct in terms of it is Rubio, it is Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, the pro-Israel crowd, which have most directly hitched their wagon to Donald Trump. And more directly, they're making it the direct litmus test for 2028. Now, the anti-Israel right, or I guess the pro-America right, is also doing the same thing. Part of the reason that Tucker Fuentes interview happened, I believe, I have no inside information, is genuinely to force, a choice for a lot of people who are in the American right wing to be like, okay, well, what do we find most offensive about what's happening here? And,
I don't know if it was to force a choice, but I think it was to provide an alternative choice and prove that there is one out there. Because even right before that, because I was like, I have to watch this. But right before that happens, it feels like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson were feuding. They're like calling each other Fed and CIA and all sorts of stuff. And so, and that's the thing, is that I think Tucker is very savvy. And I think he realized, look, strange bedfellows, Nick Fuentes, he's actually talked about it a little bit. He said, oh yeah, I didn't realize how big he was. But then you look, and now since Charlie Kirk's assassination, well, who's the largest political commentator for young men? Nick Fuentes. And so when you're looking at that, of course, why wouldn't he want to talk to him and understand where he's coming from and why are so many people flocking to him? I mean, you should have that conversation and then, of course, put it out there and, expose more people to him. And especially if you think, okay, he's moved now and shifted, like I said, giving him the best faith interpretation of, okay, he's a little bit older now, maybe he's calmed down, maybe it was a character and he realized that that's not viable any longer. If you think those types of things, then you should present that and allow people to make their own choice on the matter. So that's just my opinion on it. I don't know if it was to force a decision, like, oh, you have to pick one of us. But I think it was, if you don't want to lose these people, if you don't want them to sway wildly back towards the Democrats, you need to say, hey, we are breaking from, we don't like what's going on as well, and please join us instead of going back over to the Democrats. So I think it was just kind of a break glass in case of emergency. That's what they did, and they said, here's this alternative path that you can go on to so that hopefully we do not lose momentum. We can say we don't like what's going on, and you can still be a Republican and stay with us, more or less.
Like you said, look, I mean, God, Nick, he's a very, very smart guy in terms of calibrating a lot of his language now currently to be the most appealing to mass audience in the hopes that a lot of people may forget. However, for all the people who complain about him, as I have said here before, he literally was.
And I would not be intellectually honest if I did not bring up, I do think that is a very distinct possibility, because anyone who is smart enough to have figured out a way to grow their audience to a large enough size that they become the largest commentator for any group, in this case young men, anyone who's that intelligent to do it organically is also intelligent enough to look at the current situation. And that's why you always have to take a grain of salt. Like, yes, I try and see if I can figure out if they are genuine in the things that they are saying. But anyone who is smart enough will be able to, in small sample sizes, or even, and by small sample size, obviously there's a large body of his work out there. But when he goes on other podcasts where he knows he's going to be exposed to a much larger audience, or, now in the wake of Charlie Kirk, my 1 hour a day or however long his shows are, as I'm putting these out, I can present a more measured persona, right? That could 100% be it. Because the same thing, I have thought that as well, where, if I threw myself in, the far left, actually the best thing I could probably do is be a far left commentator, because all of the commentators in that area are just awful because their brains are mush, in my opinion. But if I wanted to, I would go there and I would just, use my thought process to, and because I don't particularly agree with most of the things, but how do I create the most impregnable arguments for that side? Because I don't believe in what they believe in. So what could I craft that would make me believe in what they're saying? And so then that would be my smartest move, because there's all the big ones, all the largest people are right aligned. That's just a fact. And so once again, if I was being politically savvy, that's what I would do. I don't do that because I think it is best for me and for cultivating the type of audience that I want to represent my own action. How do I actually think about things, and to build towards the perfect, right? That's how I like to call it, build towards the perfect. In that, yes, it may not be realistic, but if you emulate, here is the path, and here's how things should be done, and I truly believe that this is the way things should go, well then hopefully people see that and they try and do the same things that you're doing. And so that is my goal. But if I wanted to be virally popular, I would not do what I'm doing at all. And again, that may be what is going on here. It's totally possible that, yes, he's just cultivating a new personality, whereas his other one was shocking. This one is measured, and how can I be taken seriously, and how can I step basically into the shoes of Charlie Kirk and take over and build an empire. And that, I think, is entirely possible. That's an entirely possible outcome and something that he could be doing. And again, if I did not admit to that, that would not be intellectually honest.
Working on the Kanye West campaign, he was dead irrelevant and a joke back in 2023. October 7th resurrected his entire image because he had something to criticize, to expose, and to fight against. And that's part of the reason that he is in the prominent position of where he is right now. And that's entirely a creation, I believe, of the Zionist right and of the way that they've handled themselves over the last 2 years. It's one where if they correct incorrectly see them as a threat, but they are the mirror image in a lot of ways, rhetorically, and to the effect also of destroying MAGA. Israel is destroying MAGA. Israel is destroying the Republican Party. It already destroyed the Democratic Party. It's destroying much of the Republican Party because it's about generational lines, and it's not just about the actions in Gaza. It's fundamentally a question of who do you work for and who do you care about the most. If you care about this foreign nation at the expense of ours, which you can directly say about Islam, but you're not capable of saying it about this, well, you're a hypocrite, and you're the people with all the power. You're directly, it appears, this is the one issue in which you're willing to compromise all of your principles. That's what makes people go crazy.
And I think another huge component of that as well is that there's no recourse for the average person. Like, if you think about what percentage of the US population, if we were allowed to vote, like imagine that all voting, Congress is basically gone, just everyone goes on their phone and we all vote what should happen. I would guess that over 90% of people said we need to stop sending money to Israel. But that might be something that we all believe and all agree with. But the problem with that is, no matter how many of us, that is the will of the people, it's not being represented. And when it's not being represented, again, that is the best way to get everyone to turn on that thing, whatever that thing is, in this case, Israel. That's how you're getting so many people to become radicalized against Israel, is because we were all saying, knock it off, we don't want to be supporting Gaza, and then Josh Shapiro is out there signing bombs to blow up babies and women. And so, yeah, of course, we're fed up with it, and it's going to radicalize people against Israel. Just obviously.
Read that quote from you may not have seen it. There's a long piece in the New York Times about Tucker Carlson. What he says there is he was like, I was truly shocked to find out that many of the Republicans who I have been friends with and others do not care nearly as much about free speech as they allegedly, pretended to over the last 10 years. I feel that way too. I mean, I actually do feel more galled by a Ben Shapiro or by, a myriad of other right-wing figures, the Trump administration, to not only run on a position of free speech, to, be against the woke left and to say that this is bad and anti-American, and then to come into office and directly use, anti-free speech measures to shut down dissent, again, over an issue, of a foreign country.
And this I 100% agree with, because this is what has really turned me rabidly against them, and why a lot of my videos have been negative, because number one, I think they've been doing a lot of negative things, but number two, free speech 100%, because the amount of crackdown by the left during COVID especially, but around a bunch of different issues, the amount of free speech crackdown on there, yeah, that pissed me off. You literally couldn't say anything. And I wasn't even really making videos, but whenever I would, just a personal post about, is this okay that I've suffered thousands of dollars worth in medical bills for something that was essentially a free vaccine, and I'm not being covered basically at all. Like, this is coming out of my pocket because I had a heart attack from something that they censored any sort of, you literally couldn't search it for negative side effects. And then, I turn on DuckDuckGo and turns out there's tons of side effects being reported. But yeah, when that's happening, then that was my number one issue. And so when you're now seeing it happen, and especially to Sagar's point there, where there was like a Ben Shapiro, where all during, these woke people and they're trying to cancel free speech and blah, blah, like again, you're on the side of that. But then to see it literally flip on a dime when, now it's being, we have to crack down on speech of anyone who's criticizing Israel. Well, then of course I'm going to be outraged, because when I say free speech, I mean free speech for everyone and everything. And so when you are going against that ends, well, now you're going to radicalize me against you. Now I don't believe in anything you say, and a lot of other people are in that camp too. Just look at Ben Shapiro's ratings and the way that Daily Wire has been trending. Not in a good direction.
Like, That's why the Israel issue resonates, is because it's the one where people are willing to compromise everything that they've ever said before in order to act seemingly on behalf of this foreign power. And it's what gives the cleanest hit to a Nick Fuentes and anybody else. And so in my opinion, they have nobody but themselves to blame. Why should we listen to you about tone policing? We can't. I can't deal with it.
I mean, I think it would be ideal if you had two political parties that both were able to gatekeep actual neo-Nazis. Yeah. But when you have, I mean, listen, on the Democratic side, why was Israel such a problem for Democratic leadership? It's because
And I aggressively disagree with that take. You don't want to... I think tone policing is absolutely wrong, because the issue is, what you need to do is you need to allow someone to come out with their dumbest ideas and their dumbest takes. And then you look at that and then you say, oh yeah, I want nothing. The free market will take care of problematic people, typically, except in situations where, okay, now people are radicalizing against Israel, but they did that to themselves. So that technically is the free market taking care of it. You shot yourself in the foot, and now a lot of people are not such strong fans of you. So my problem is with that is when you do try and tone police like that, and I can just use my example with Nick Fuentes. I was not familiar with his work at all. Didn't pay attention to it whatsoever. So I did not see. I had to kind of dig through and find some of the older problematic stuff that he had to say. Although, once again, some of his viewpoints are still not exactly the way that I believe, right? It's not aligned with me, but he's very measured in the way that he says those things and the way that he presents them now. But part of my lack of familiarity with him is that he's banned on like every single platform except for Rumble now. Like, they even took him down. I guess he was on Spotify, and they took him down from there. So now he's literally like only on Rumble and I guess X as well. So when you are not able to access the things that he's actually saying, well, then you have no familiarity with any of his work. Like, do you think she actually goes on Rumble and tries to see what he's saying? No, absolutely not. And so when you're censoring people from off these platforms, well, then I don't know. And then you're more susceptible to, once again, because a week ahead of Charlie Kirk's assassination, he could have been saying awful stuff. But I have no clue, and I'm not going to go back through his entire catalog. I'm going to look at the things that he's saying currently. And so, I don't know. That's why especially right after it happened and I watched some of his stuff, I said, well, I don't know really how to feel about him because I've watched like 2 things with him. Again, I'm not going back through all his old catalog. I'm looking at whatever the new stuff is he's pointing out. So the actual fact is that by trying to silence him, that is what is whitewashing him. Because now you're basically disallowing me unless I have an overwhelming interest. And by the way, then he becomes more popular. So now people are clipping favorable takes from his recent shows where he's being more measured anyway. And then those are the ones they're sharing because those are the ones that more reasonable people are agreeing with. And those are the ones that they're talking about. And at the beginning of this even, she said, oh yeah, that I can't disagree with what he's saying there. And those are the things that are becoming viral. Put him back on every platform. Let him hang himself. Let him shoot himself in the foot. Don't silence him because it also is just Streisand affecting the whole thing. Because now he's taboo and now you want to go seek him out and now you want to watch what he has to say. So the free market will take care of itself. If he's presenting idiotic ideas that are insane, the market will let you know.
Expose the hypocrisy of the distance between their rhetoric about human rights, right, and these like liberal international humanitarian values and claiming to care about democracy and international law and all these things, and then an act of genocide. And the base looked at that and it's like, this is disgusting. Like, we actually do believe in these international human rights values. Like, we actually believe people should have equal rights and we shouldn't support ethno-states and apartheid and genocide. And we cannot understand why you would be such incredible, disgusting, murderous hypocrites when it comes to this. On the right, to go a level deeper even than Israel, MAGA is increasingly centered around Christian nationalism. So it's okay for you to then say, okay, well, the Muslims have to go and the Hindus are disgusting and they have to go. But no, we're going to draw the line and we're going to protect. You can't say anything hateful about Jewish people. Nick Fuentes is the logical conclusion of the philosophy that they have centered within the MAGA movement, increasingly centered within the MAGA movement. So when he says MAGA is dead, I think he's absolutely right, because he is part of, he is like the logical end state of MAGA. And the fact that he is critical of them from the right.
I halfway agree with this. I don't know that it's because of Christianity, though. I think it is because of anti-Israeli sentiments. And once again, they're doing it to themselves, right? All these pro-Israeli commentators and, you know, people who are essentially selling out to and are not going to criticize what everyone sees and everyone is so critical of in terms of a genocide and what's going on over in Israel/Gaza. Like, that is what the actual end state is. And why you're getting a Nick Fuentes is because, as I will regularly talk about when it comes to politics, is that also you're going to see more and more, because no one's doing anything for the average American. They all refuse to. It's just constant forever wars. So you're going to see more and more radical candidates and figureheads on both sides. That's why you see Zoran Mandami. That's why you're seeing Nick Fuentes. That's why you're seeing these people who are the only ones who are actually willing to, because they're so far out on the fringes, they're willing to say, enough is enough. We've had it with the status quo, and we want to upset the apple cart. And that is what is actually happening. I don't think it's the conclusion of the Christian state. I think it is, once again, you're seeking out more and more radicalized candidates. I think it has nothing to do with Christianity.
And you have Trump, who is incredibly weak at this point, who just took this electoral shellacking, who is a lame duck, who is an old man, increasingly looking like an old man, falling asleep in meetings, falling asleep while he's standing up at White House events, who's lost control of his own political...
And the Bill Clinton thing. I think that was a huge blow. And it is so funny because I told quite a few people that I talked to about it, but I said, it's so funny to me because I will receive so much pushback from people who are more right-aligned, like criticism from Trump cultists when I make videos that are even moderately critical or trying to take colorblind eye to, like, okay, what is actually going on here and what are the problems and why are we seeing these trends that we're seeing? They just refuse to. They stick their head in the sand. They yell at me. No, that's not true at all. It was just a bunch of blue states that did the elections and whatever. They make it an innumerable amount of excuses, but none of them had a single word to say about Trump and Bill Clinton. None of them tried to deny it. And I think that has been a huge blow to him as well, because you just go, yeah, okay, like, we don't take you seriously anymore. Like, if this is what actually happened, and I'm in the camp that it did, and for the reason why, I will just pose this question to you, and you answer it, and if you have a comeback, drop it in the comments. But think about this. Why would Mark Epstein, why would he send a message to Jeffrey Epstein asking if Putin had the picture of Trump blowing Bubba, who Bubba is, probably Clinton, but why would he ask him that in a private message between two brothers if he's trying to publicly smear him? They came out. It's a real email. Mark Epstein didn't even deny that. But if that was the case, you have to provide me a more logical explanation about why that was a lie than me saying that is the truth. Like, you have to provide something very compelling for me or anyone else, I think, to believe that is not what actually happened. But yes, that also makes him look incredibly weak and crazy. Like, it's better the thing I will give him is it's better than he did bad things to children. He did naughty, disgusting, grotesque things to children. It's better than that, but it's still insane and makes you look weak and unserious, like an unserious person.
Party can't even get them to vote his way on the Epstein files, has to completely 180. Everyone is jockeying for what is going to come after Trump. And so through the fact of his political weakness and the exposing of the ideological fissures, flaws, hypocrisies, and lies of the sort of core MAGA ideology, I think Fuentes is absolutely right. And, you know, you can already see, and this is part of what's happening with Marjorie Taylor Greene, part of what's happening with Thomas Massie, part of what's happening with Ted Cruz. You can see everyone starting to jockey, and JD Vance obviously starting to jockey for what is going to be next. This administration is already a failure. You know, there's nothing Trump could do at this point to like pull a rabbit out of the hat and totally remake the economy. The economy is going is headed south and probably only going to get worse.
That I don't entirely agree with. It's only 1 year in. He absolutely could turn it around. But what would need to happen is literally destroy private equity. Completely get rid of it. It's not allowed to buy any businesses. It's literally not allowed to operate at all, which functionally, then I would say, yes, he is not going to do anything. He's not actually going to fix anything because he has no will at all to do anything like that, that would completely turn a lot of things around. That would fix the housing market. There would be a lot of things that would be fixed by getting rid of private equity and liquidating everything. All the assets, all the 25% of single family homes would be opened up immediately into the marketplace. Like there's a lot of things that would happen if these companies were no longer allowed to operate. So yes, it could be done. But then the other thing is too, there is a component of that where even if he did that, the rally would not be as strong as we would hope it would be because of AI. And companies replacing jobs with AI. And so that is the problem with it, is even if he got rid of private equity and everything started rebounding and things were going great and he outlawed mergers and acquisitions so that, hey, you got to build it yourself in-house. If you want to acquire a company, build your own version of that in-house. So even if he did, I'll say those two things, those would be very impactful. You still might not see a huge rally because of AI. And so that is the thing that I think would be incredibly difficult of a hurdle for him to overcome. And then you'd have to, okay, well, we're going to have to find some way to actually withdraw money from these companies that are leveraging AI and then redistribute that to anyone who has lost their job because of it or whatever the situation might be. So it is very challenging. Do I think it's completely impossible to overcome? No, I do not, the way that she's saying that it is. But do I think it is practically impossible? That is the way that I would more likely lean.
None of his 50-year mortgage ideas are going to pull it out of the tailspin. They're betting massively on AI technology that's going to replace, millions of workers in their ideal. Like the whole thing is completely bankrupt and is increasingly exposed as so. So, I've been wrong about Trump before. I thought he would lose to Kamala, so people should take my words with a grain of salt. I've been wrong in the past. There's no doubt about it. But I have never seen this level of weakness in the coalition, this level of genuine sort of like foundational fissures. And I've never seen someone from within the movement be able to go up against Trump and get the better of him. And now we have effectively like multiple people who are able to do that and pull it off.
Yeah, I mean.
And the other thing I'll say about that is that statement about, fissures in there. I think a huge component of that is that Trump just doesn't really care this time around. He doesn't need to position himself in a way that, oh yeah, I need to be reelected. And it literally is. I mean, all you had to do, and this is one of the things that I hated the most at the beginning, was when he did the Trump and the Melania coin, right? When they did their own cryptocurrencies and they basically just rug pulled the American public. which it's like you're literally rug pulling your supporters. And so that to me is so disgusting. And that was a perfect indicator of exactly the way that this term is going. It's just everything is up for sale. If you can, siphon some money off to Trump somehow, he's willing to let you do pretty much whatever you want. He doesn't really care. And that is the way that I think a lot of it has seemed to me that things are operating. So, of course, when you believe nothing and you stand for nothing and you're literally just, hey, the highest bidder gets whatever they want, well, then in that instance, of course you're going to see fissures and you're going to see this happening. And again, as Trump becomes older and less capable, then you're not going to be able to hold people at bay. They're probably doing the same calculations that I laid out of, yeah, he's not running again. And okay, he might be like essentially a glorified commentator in the future, but he's not actually going to swing as much political power as he has for the last 8 years. And so, again, that's my take on it, but that is why I think you have been seeing these fissures and these cracking points. And also, going back to the point that I had made previously of your coalition is so big and they want so many different things. And that's why I kind of cast a little bit of doubt on the America First movement is, yeah, all those personalities that Nick Fuentes listed off are diversely different. And so, yes, there is a tepid through line there, but to say that they have a lot of things in common is a little bit of a reach, I think. So that's just kind of where I stand on that.
Look, let's talk about MAGA, right? Again, about what you were saying. Now, I mean, I think that's a convenient left explanation because one of the things that they dream about is that anybody who is opposed to immigration is racist, right? I mean, that's literally kind of been the talking point now for over a decade about Trump. I personally did not believe that. And I don't think that a lot of people believe that either who supported Trump in the 2024 election. People wanted less chaos. There are legitimate, non-racial arguments to make about immigration restriction. There are a lot also to make, let's say, even about Israel, anti-Semitism, about nationalism itself. If we talk about the intellectual heirs of American nationalism back to the early days, let's say with the Progressive Party under Theodore Roosevelt, there was an explicit element specifically to fight against know-nothings and the other strain of racialism and anti-Catholicism that was in the right, and instead to make it about the nation centered in and of itself, to include the Irishman, the Scotsman, as long as people were able to forego, their attachments to foreign nations and to buy into a national civic project. Like, you're saying that's what MAGA is all about. I don't believe that. I actually don't believe that that's really what a lot of the people who voted for Trump and believed, America First itself as an ideology itself. Now, I think Fuentes likes MAGA to be this because that's what he wants, right? And part of what Trump has always done is he's been kind of a Rorschach test where you could see civic nationalism if you want. You could also see overt racialism if you want to. Some of the actions of the administration, don't necessarily make the case, that I'm making here. And that's where that becomes the logical endpoint, where when you start to use free speech, to go after people who are criticizing Israel, when you are overtly just not really allowing, ethnocentrism itself to be a primary argument for immigration instead of anything economic or to be to your own benefit, that is where it validates some of the MAGA, that you're talking about, one that I've personally been trying to, go fight against now for 10 years. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I have been successful. I think that movement itself about competence, about civic nationalism, which again, I still believe validated in the 2024 election. A lot of people were actually on board with that vision and they did win the popular vote. First time a Republican has done it since 2004. That is an extraordinary achievement. All of this is to be said here.
The problem is trying to draw conclusions from that, because I think you could have made more of that case if it wasn't literally the vice president that was installed into the candidacy. If you had an open primary and she actually had to beat out other people so that she could, hey, she got the nomination and she deserves it and this is our smartest and most capable candidate, that's one thing. But she's literally part of the current regime that's in office. She's number 2, second in command, and then she also says, and this is on her, that there's nothing she can think of that she would change from what Joe Biden has been doing. And so you see that, and he was already immensely unpopular heading into the elections. And I mean, I think a huge component of that is just how bad were things then? Do I think they've gotten better? Not really. So, okay. But that is the thing, is I think it had as much to do with the things that Trump promised as it does that the Democrats just tripped all over themselves to try and destroy their own candidacy. And so, again, that is why, and I've talked about with the redistricting conversation, that's why you cannot rely on 2024 as, oh yeah, this is what we're going to see going into the future. There's a reason it was a red wave, because it was a confluence of a bunch of different factors. Both the Republicans, hey, we're promising you something different, we're the change candidate, and the Democrats refusing to do anything correct. So that's where I think it landed. And so, yeah, I don't know that it was specifically what he's calling out here.
Is that if they want to go down the rabbit hole of people who vote for Mamdani or socialist Muslims, and that Mamdani itself, socialist Muslim, needs to be denaturalized, be deported, then don't be surprised when the other side of that coin is going to be exposed when we got to start talking about dual loyalty and about foreign, about being beholden to foreign ideologies or any of that. You cannot gatekeep in that. The better option is to basically embrace everybody on the terms as Americans and to debate, but that's not what they've chosen to do.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem, because once again, it's ideological consistency. Because when you don't have that, when you're favoring one group over another, well, then that's where we just go, you're a hypocrite, and we don't believe you, and we don't respect you, and we don't want to consume any of your thoughts and ideas anymore. We no longer give any sort of weight to the things that you say. And once again, just look at Daily Wire. Look at where Ben Shapiro was versus where he is now. I mean, it's no real surprise. And it's going to continue in that trajectory as long as there's a spotlight being shined onto Israel. And he's having to be forced to defend these immensely unpopular ideas.
And that's also why, that's why if you accept that framing, which many current modern Republicans do, which is to make it about foreign entanglements when it comes to Zoran Mamdani, and not instead about the campaign issue and the campaign-related stuff itself, for why a lot of people voted for it, let's say on affordability, then you do go down the ethnic rabbit hole, which is to his direct benefit. That's what he wants more than anything. I mean, it's ironic because he's talking there about, if I said this about Muslims, it's like, dude, I'm pretty sure you have said all that about Muslims, number one. But number two, you like
it's not
this.
like he's some lover of Arabs or Muslims.
Yeah, and
all right.
you know what? Look, let me also say, I'm no great, fan. I've made plenty of comments here, and I think it's totally legitimate to talk about Islamic migration or any of that. I will talk that all day long as long as what we're trying to strive for is American values and a non-racialized view of the world, okay? That's very different. But what they celebrate openly is this discussion of, what they celebrate openly is this framework explicitly around America must be a, Christian white nation, which a lot of the Islamic stuff kind of basically, tacitly embraces. They just have a Jewish carve-out for it. And he's like, well, no, I don't want that Jewish carve-out too. So then you can't be surprised when this happens, right? So in a lot of ways, you have only yourselves to blame. And this is really where Richard Hanania, I have to give credit where due, his Abeliophile defense notwithstanding, is which he talks has recently taken up as a cause. What he says is about the Groyperization of a lot of Republican politics, is if you openly embrace denaturalized, deport type rhetoric about anybody who opposes you, then it's not an accident that some Fuentes literally anti-Jewish is going to be openly embraced within that framework, because that is the end point. And if that's the choice, well, I think it's pretty bad, and I'm out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds, and I don't remember who said this. It might have been Hanani, I'm not sure, but it reminds in a sense of the rise of Trump, where, people, Fox News or the George W. Bush Republican Party would flirt with rhetoric, but he would come out and say it more directly. And so increasingly, especially in Trump 2.0, with Stephen Miller being such a central figure,
and that's important, because I think the reason why that was so attractive is that when people were making vague references to things that they would do, or they weren't laying out direct plans, and they weren't calling balls and strikes, you just see mealy mouth. And that is the way that all politics have been going for as long as I can remember now, is they promise you like 15 different things, they maybe accomplish 2, and so we go, you didn't deliver anything for us, really. Because like the things that they did deliver are like the most mediocre milquetoast things that they possibly could do, because that won't piss off the donor class. And so when you're seeing that over and over again, well, then that is what is going to be attractive, is someone who comes out with very bold rhetoric, because you say, that's a guy who's not afraid to call out the BS, and I feel like he's going to deliver for me. And that is what was so attractive, I think, about Trump. Because who can we get that's not a politician? That's basically where we are right now, because anyone who is a politician has not done anything for us. If anything, they've just done constant things against us. And so that is, I think, what was so attractive about it.
Is a blood and soil white nationalist, like wants the ethno state, is quite upfront about that. And that is his ideological project, and it drives him day and night. When you have him in charge, and you have the DHS posting the way they are, and the videos and the social media content that they put out, and the way that they conduct themselves, and the things that they say. And yes, Laura Loomer being a close advisor and describing herself as a proud Islamophobe who is just openly racist. You have embraced a racialist view of the world. That is your view. That is the policy you're implementing. That is a lot of the communications that are coming out. But you aren't going that.
Now, I'm not certain that I agree with that, because that's not really the problem is, and she's talking about mostly immigration here, right? The issue is that this is literally just a backlash to that. And it's not that it's racism against a certain group, because the people who flooded in over the previous 4 years were from everywhere. And I don't think, yes, okay, it may have been, okay, there might be a commonality for the people that they're targeting. But again, it's across all lines. And so I don't think, like, I haven't heard anyone say, get all the Mexicans out or anything like that, who's agreed with the immigration stuff, or who's on the side of, yes, this is the route that we need to be taking. We need to get these people out. It's not get the Mexicans out. It's literally just get all the people who came in the last 4 years, get them out. Because they came over under false pretenses, and they shouldn't be here because they're deflating American wages. Point blank. That is unarguable. And so her framing of, oh yeah, these people are racist, is absolutely not true. That is completely false. And I would be interested to what she thinks, what her claims are about that. Because that again, anyone who's on the side of this issue says get everyone out if they're not here legally. And I think and to temper what I just said, I think there should be carve outs. Mine is on that, in that 4 years. Get all the people in those 4 years out. Anyone who's been here for, a decade, basically before Trump, during Trump 1 or before, like, there are carve-outs. I think there should be immigration reform. If we really need cheaper labor, that should be a discussion that should be had. And look at it at a case-by-case basis. Like, if you're just saying that because you want cheap labor and these people are going to take jobs that pay way less than any American would be willing to take for what maid job or someone working on a farm or whatever, and you're making astronomical profits, that's not a reason for a labor reform. Pay people more. You can afford to pay people more, pay people more. I don't know what to tell you. That's BS. But there should be a conversation and a breaking down of, do we actually need an immigration reform? And oh, by the way, people who have been here for 12 years and were brought over as children and have no ties to Mexico, or, and given that time frame, most likely Mexico. But yeah, though there should be some sort of amnesty given to them. So don't think that I'm just, get people out of here. No, there should be some reform and some exceptions and all that kind of stuff. But everyone in the last 4 years, get them out. All of them. And that's the backlash to it. It's not that they're racist. It's that an idiotic policy was upheld in regards to border security for corporation. It's not because, we're so empathetic. It's literally for corporations. That's why they allowed this to happen. Get them all out.
Next step of being quite as overt, or frankly, quite as consistent as Nick Fuentes is. Nick Fuentes says, yes, I am an overt racialist. Yes, I want this country to be for white Christians. That's what we should have. And guess what? Jews are not white Christians.
The thing about that, I don't agree with that, because with Nick Fuentes' view on white Christian state, because the problem is with that is not what America was founded as, right? It was let people in, if you want to flee and you want to come here, and obviously at a certain point you probably need to draw a line and say, okay, we just can't take in any more people. But that's the thing, that is not what we were founded on. So if we're going to put in limits, we need to figure out what that is. If we're going to do, again, it has to be formalized. There's no backdoor BS where we just let people flood in, and then there's an unwritten policy of, we're going to help them come across, and then we're going to send them out into America, and we're going to give them permits to work, or they're going to work under the table, or we're not going to audit the companies that we know. It's very easy to identify the verticals that these illegal immigrants are going into. The stereotypes about this exist for a reason. And so it just has to be above board. That's where I come at it. I don't care what we decide as long as it's formalized and we all know what the rules are. But again, the point of that is in saying that isn't what the stated goals of the America project in the beginning, the founding fathers, that's not what they set out to do. And so that's not what the vision of America was. So that's where I, do not agree with that drive, because that wasn't what we were founded on.
So they're out. So he is taking the more overt, consistent view of the ideological project that they set in motion. Now, I think that my own view is that you're right, Soccer. I don't think that many of the people who voted for Trump, I don't think that they want an overtly neo-Nazi, outright racist party. I think that there are many people who voted for Trump who are going to be repelled by that. But that is that is what they have set in motion. That is the logical endpoint of the ideology that, especially in Trump 2.0, they have put in place and heavily, heavily flirted with. So that's why.
And here's the problem with this and this type of thinking, and the radicalization that you're seeing is, again, as someone who's pretty firmly in the center, I say, okay, I believe with some of this, I believe some of this. The more it polarizes, the harder it is to pick a side. And so that is where you're going to lose anyone with half a brain, because you're going to go, I can't identify with either of these. It's either racialist or woke, basically racist against white people. That's literally what the dividing line is between these two extremes, is either F white men or F everyone but white men. And it's like, okay, can we have some common sense in the middle, please? But that, again, that's not the way that it's driving. And that is, I think, the worst thing about it, is you're literally just pitting everyone against people who want to discriminate, because I don't want to say white men against everyone, because I think there are people who are intelligent, who are not white men, that say that, you know, the far left is unfair and it is racist, which it is. I think that's undeniable. But then how can I possibly go into this camp when now they want to disadvantage me? And so by basically pushing those people out, well, what do you, like, again, there's no winning for anyone who is common sense in the middle. And that's where we find ourselves.
I think, you know, when I say I think he's right that MAGA is dead, because Nick Fuentes and others, but Nick Fuentes is sort of forcing a choosing. He's forcing a divide. He's forcing a choosing. Are you going to be this overtly racialist, white nationalist, ethno-state, blood and soil project? Are you going to do that? And are you going to be consistent about it, even when it comes to the Jews? And there aren't going to be any sacred ethnicities or religions or, you know, or sacred cows. Everybody's on the table. Or are you going to be, you know, some sort of a squish and believe everybody should have equal rights and that we should live together in this sort of like pluralistic democratic project that, you know, has been imperfectly practiced?
And that's just laughable, though, because as a white male, that's not what they've been doing. They've literally been saying F white men. That's all. I mean, you heard people were very bold, just like people are very bold. You know, Republicans are very bold right now. Democrats were very bold the last 4 years in basically saying F white men, and that they are literally should be racism against that group. I saw it. I didn't cry about it because it's like, whatever. I guess I'll find my own path. But like the framing that she provides here is just laughable at best. Like that's not actually what it was, and you know it, and it's disingenuous to frame it in that way.
This in the US for many years. He is forcing a choosing. And that's why I think that plus Trump's political weakness and like being a lame dunk and all of that sort of stuff is why I think he fundamentally is correct about MAGA being broken apart and being dead and not meaning anything. And now people are going to have to pick sides of where they are. And, you know, picking the Ben Shapiro side of it's fine to hate everybody except the Jews, I don't think that that's going to be a sustainable place to continue to stand.
No, it's not a sustainable place. And that is ultimately what is fracturing all of this. You can't support a literal Jewish ethno-state and overtly to the point where you're willing to sacrifice all of your American principles and then say, no, we shouldn't have an ethno-state here. You're like, come on, okay? I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And this is part of what is broken down a lot. I mean, look, I find it really tragic. I think it's bad, you know, and I think it's really grim because what they don't understand is that their embrace of Israel has led to this embrace now of overt racialism. They also don't understand that for a lot of people, let's say if you're younger, you're 22, you know, and you're just getting into politics. You haven't, you know, Crystal, you and I have been aware of Fuentes and the Groyper phenomenon or whatever for 8 years, right? So we remember a lot of the past, but they don't. They actually have no idea. They don't, you know, they currently see, oh, this is very reasonable. Of course. Oh, calling out Trump. Well, yeah, if that's the tack that we believe in, we should fully take it, you know, in this direction. And so I fully understand how disgruntled, and especially people who love degenerate act.
And for the entirety of the time that they have been paying attention to this, by the way, he has been banned on all these platforms, so they haven't even gotten to hear from him. And during the time where he had these more maximalist claims and rhetoric and all this kind of stuff. So once again, silencing him actually just puts him in the dark, and then no one is exposed to him, so that when he comes out with more measured rhetoric, well, now that's what everyone has heard. And that is the image that everyone is seeing. And, well, that's where we are. That's how we're getting here. That's why he's so popular, is because trying to silence him has only blown him up 1,000 times bigger.
captivity and are seething, coping with a variety of vices of which everybody knows that I hate, and you embrace hateful politics, especially also in the age of large unemployment and inability to meet a spouse. You're fully addicted to pornography, phone. You're really in a place where it does not seem society wants to help you. I can always intellectually understand, as I have read many books of previous countries where this has happened, how this can go down that direction. I don't think that that is an embrace of that. I think we can just all simply understand that radical politics are a logical consequence of the current conditions that we live in. Part of the reason why I attack those conditions vehemently. Part of the reason why we talk about AI and many of these other phenomena. But the problem too for the Republicans is they're not really trying to address many of those issues I just described as well. If anything, they're probably making it worse with a lot of the rise of AI. So in a multi kind of factorial way, I always look at who's in power, who is to blame. I think they're the ones to blame. Now, people have agency. If you're going to say overtly racist shit, be openly anti-Semitic, yeah, screw you, okay? Nobody is absolving people who hold those views, but it's also not difficult to see how that it could be a logical endpoint for how you end up in this right now. And, Charlie Kirk saw that coming with a lot of the Israel stuff that they were dealing with over at TPUSA. It's a problem now for the entire, not just Republican Party, that's just a problem for the nation broadly. Because, like you were saying about norms and gatekeeping, if you're willing to blow gatekeeping, institutions, rhetoric, and all of that on behalf of a foreign government for Israel, then you, in my opinion, again, are the person then who opened up the so-called gates to every, crazy person in America. So, because you have no moral authority anymore. You have to restore some sort of moral authority and civic understanding between people so that we can all re-agree kind of on what guardrails and all of that were. That's part of the reason I hate the mainstream media, right? Is because I'm like, listen, I know, independent media isn't some great bastion, but I thought that some of the norms and the things that they find offensive, whatever, are horrible and are bad. But what we're living through is kind of a reformation of that. And we're living with the logical consequence of what I think, again, a lot of these establishment people propped up and they normalized ethno-state worship and sacrificing principles on behalf of foreign government. Well, where did you think it was going to go? And
that's exactly correct. Because, both sides are bought and paid for. And so once again, when you're seeing this, and I think it cannot be overstated, I'll say it a million different times, anything that there is bipartisan support for is not in the average American's best interest. Like support for Israel, war, censorship, these are the only sorts of things that they can ever seem to agree on. And so when you're seeing that, those are all things that are not good for you and me. It's literally good for the ruling class, and that's it. The people who have stock in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Like those are the only, and that work for those companies. That's it. And so, yes, when that is the case, you can't rely on any of these people. All of them make you want to pull your hair out. Like it's not sustainable. It's going to make people upset, and it's going to continually radicalize people further and further to anyone who's willing to basically say, get Israel out. And that's kind of the point that we're at. And then by trying to shut these people down, well, then you're trying to police our free speech. What was this entire country founded on? Free speech. And so when that's happening, it's going to further radicalize, more and more and more radicalize people against you. And you're only making it worse.
Many people were warned about this too. Zed Jelani in particular has been at the forefront always about how openly embracing and supporting current Israeli government, Israeli policy, the destruction, a lot of the domestic policy, which is overtly on behalf of Israel, not only increasing anti-Semitism, undermining American values, and how ultimately the idea that we should all just be treated equally is kind of directly undermined by a lot of the pro-Israel project. And so when people take that seriously, that type of rhetoric, they will embrace the American kind of end of that. And that's scary for everyone, Jews included, but not just them.
Yeah, indeed. And I want to be clear. I don't think that Fuentes-style neo-Nazism is going to succeed as a political project. I don't think it's a majority coalition, but I do think it is succeeding at destroying MAGA. And I think that it, and look, put it on full display. Let people see, what the views are, the hate and the ugliness that is embraced by, people with an avowedly like central racialist worldview. And, I think most Americans, I have enough faith in this country that I think most Americans will be repelled.
This is just like, okay, so how do you propose we do that? Like, yes, okay, you're saying now that you agree with me, but literally at the beginning of this segment, you were saying, oh no, we need to clamp down on that kind of neo-Nazi speech. But no, that's not how you beat it out. You don't beat it out by trying to tuck it away. You beat it out by, okay, here's what you believe, and let me destroy you in some sort of debate. Let me show you why what you think is not a good idea. This is not the direction that you want to go. Let me show you a better path. That is the direction you need to go. So again, she kind of has flipped a 180 here, and I'm curious what her actual solution would be, because again, what she's saying now versus what she started saying are completely in two diametrically opposed camps.
And disgusted by, a group of people who, follows a guy who says that he thinks Hitler's great and the Holocaust was faked or exaggerated, and that he's worried about quote unquote organized Jewry and, all the horrific things that he says about every minority group. I think that will be rejected by Americans, but he certainly has caused, like I said, he's caused a choosing within the Republican Party.
I'm not so sure that it is going to be fully rejected, because once again, these are, and especially if they actually somehow decide to all align together, these are the only people who are saying anything even remotely critical. The only ones who are willing to stand up against what they see going on. And I think what all Americans see going on, in that, yeah, we're all of our elected officials are all completely beholden to Israel. There's no trying to argue that. That's just a plain fact. And so when they are the only ones willing to say that, and as it's becoming more and more of an issue, and more Americans are seeing it and getting fed up with it, well then, if he's the only one saying that, and his party, right, if he said he was going to reestablish the American First Foundation. So again, that is why before I said he saw Charlie Kirk's blueprint and said, okay, if I moderate myself a bit, yes, I can still have some of these fringe ideas, but if I can think of more measured ways of selling them, then I can have the same type of impact that Turning Point USA had. So, of course, that's a huge opportunity for him. And that's why I say you can't discount the fact that that might have been in his calculations, that I need to tone down my rhetoric so that I can revive, get on all the platforms again, and which he should be fully allowed on anyway, so that we can understand, hey, what are your actual views? What are your actual thoughts on these topics? And then again, may the best idea win. But I think in the direction that we're going, it is more and more likely that people are going to throw in behind him. Again, he is the biggest young male political commentator on the scene right now. So it'll be interesting. I'm very curious to see where things go. I certainly think the polarization is something that I have been calling for a little bit now, where I'm saying, yeah, this is exactly why you're seeing Mamdani. Nick Fuentes is Mamdani of the right. And so, having to choose between two extremes of we're going to tax rich white people more, or different races can't get married or shouldn't. Like, how do you decide between those two things? That's not, I think, a healthy place for this country, and only drives more negative outcomes, because it's just pitting people against each other. And again, the people in the middle are just sitting here like, what is going on? Can we have any sort of common sense? But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this from me, drop me a subscription below. It really does help my channel grow. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.